So I think we'll go ahead and get started. Again, I just want to welcome everyone to our 2021 national briefing. Of course, this is the second time that we've done this virtually. Whenever we've had our national briefing in other years, we've done it in person in Washington, D.C. And of course, we miss seeing our colleagues and our national partners and our Congress members when we're in DC for our national convening, but we're so glad to be able to join you all virtually because we're able to actually see so many more people who maybe couldn't meet us or join us in DC. So it's great to be able to see you all here virtually and just want to welcome you to our national briefing. My name is Natalie Towns. I am the steering committee chair for the National Family Support Network. I am also in this great state of Georgia. I work in the Georgia Division of Family and Children's Services. I am the section director of the Prevention and Community Support section, and we developed our Georgia Family Support Network in 2018. And that's when we joined the national network, and we have been glad to be a member since then. So again, on behalf of myself, the steering committee, and the National Family Support Network staff, we want to again welcome you to our national briefing. So just to kind of get a little sense of where everyone is joining us from the call, we want to do a little poll. We're going to do a couple of polls, but the first poll will be just to see where everyone is joining us from. So are you from the Northeast, the South, the Midwest, the West, Canada, or perhaps are you joining us from another country besides the United States or Canada? And if anyone, and it looks like we have at least one person, is joining us from another country, if you would please indicate in the chat where you're joining us from, if you're joining us from another country. So it looks like I have a lot of people from the South here with me close to Georgia. We have some people from Mexico. We have representatives from the Northeast. We have a large representation from the West and then the Midwest. So just great to have such a wide variety of representation from across the nation joining us during this virtual national briefing. And so want to go to our next polling question and find out what your affiliation is. Oh, and I see someone from the Netherlands. Sorry, I missed that. Thank you for joining from the Netherlands. So what's your affiliation? Are you with a family support program? Are you with a family support network, early childhood education, K through 12 education, the university system, healthcare, government, specifically child welfare and government, a private funder, or other? And if you choose other, again, if you don't mind indicating your affiliation in the chat box for us. So it looks like we have a good amount of folks from family support networks and family support programs, government, a few from child welfare and private funders, early education. It looks like everyone is represented. And then in the chat box, I see, let's see, United Way, Community Foundation, private foster care and adoption agency, mental health providers. Wow, we have a lot of different fields represented, early child care. We have a lot of different fields represented in this virtual briefing. Always glad to have that diversity. And then lastly, we're going to ask one more poll question. How familiar are you with family resource centers? So how familiar are you with family resource centers? So are you not familiar, somewhat familiar, familiar, or very familiar? Looks like we have a lot of pros on the call, a lot of people who are very familiar with family resource centers. So yeah, over 50% are very familiar. The majority of the rest of the participants are familiar or somewhat familiar. And we have just a few folks who are not familiar. So I hope that we can help you learn a little bit more about family resource centers during this briefing. And hopefully you will have joined us earlier this morning for our virtual tour, and we have another tour this afternoon, so you can learn even more about family resource centers if you're not as familiar with them as you would like to be. So thank you all for letting us get to know a little bit more about all the people that we have on the call. Always, again, just want to get a sense of who's joining us and where they're joining us from what field they're joining us from. And then again, how familiar you are with family resource centers. Although, you know, we always say, once you've seen one family resource center, you've seen one family resource center. So there's always room to grow when we're talking about family resource centers and the family support programs. So next, I want to just kind of give a little background for you all about the National Family Support Network. The National Family Support Network was co-founded by 8 state networks of family resource centers that are shown, that are highlighted on this map in green. And then for those first 4 years, the NFSN, the National Family Support Network, had no paid staff, like many of our state networks that are volunteer coordinated. Those members coordinated the work of the National Family Support Network as volunteers on top of their jobs running their own state networks. So they were very committed not only to their state networks, but to this National Family Support Network that they were trying to form. And so in recognition of their significant contributions to the development of the National Family Support Network, all of our speakers today have been chosen from these original member states. So we're very glad to have people from these member states to be with us today, especially on the year of our anniversary. So over the last decade, the National Family Support Network has quadrupled in size. We now have 32 member networks. That includes 31 states and the District of Columbia, and that represents more than 3,000 family resource centers that serve more than 2 million people annually. That's a lot of people that are served by these great family resource centers in our networks that are part of the National Family Support Network. Our newest member is Hawaii, who joined the network in December of 2020, launching 4 new school-based FRCs virtually in the middle of the pandemic. And if you had the privilege of listening in and joining our virtual tour prior to the briefing, you were able to see and hear about the formation of the network in Hawaii. I want to thank Kathleen for that great presentation. So their amazing work was featured earlier today, and I hope you were able to hear more about that during her presentation. So just a little bit about the mission of the National Family Support Network and the vision. You know, just simply, our vision is really about turning that whole map green that we just saw. We want all of the states in the nation to be green. We want all of the states to have a network of family resource centers and family support programs. We want to make sure that all families will be able to access quality family support programs in their communities that are supported by our strong networks. So if you're from a state that's not currently green, we want to turn you green. So we love to connect with you. Please feel free to reach out to us in the chat. We want to turn all of those states green. So if you're not yet a part of the National Family Support Network, please reach out to us so we can turn your state green. A little bit about our areas of work. The National Family Support Network focuses on 3 areas of work. The first is connecting member networks with each other to enhance their effectiveness. I think I can speak for all of our networks to say that it's such a great thing to be able to have this network, to be able to hear from each other, to get ideas from each other, to bounce things off of each other, and to work with each other as we're all trying to build our networks, improve our networks, serve our families during difficult times, and make sure that we are providing the best services available in our family resource centers and family support programs. The second area of work is promoting family support best practice and evaluation. This is where our work comes in with the recently revised nationally adopted standards of quality for family strengthening and support, which is again vital to make sure we're serving our families and our communities in the best way possible. And all of the FRCs and family support programs are operating through those nationally adopted standards of quality for family strengthening and support. And then lastly, we want to raise the visibility and the value and impact of family resource centers and the networks of family resource centers as we're doing today. As we often say, family resource centers are America's best kept secret, but that's a secret that we want to get out. We don't want it to be a secret, and it's starting to get out there. And so we really want to make sure that we raise the visibility, and we make sure that everyone knows all the benefits of family resource centers and having a network of family resource centers in your state. I want to just also go over our briefing objectives, what we hope that you will get out of our national briefing today. We want to focus attention on the value and the impact of family resource centers and family resource center networks, as I just mentioned. Again, we want to celebrate our 10-year anniversary of the National Family Support Network. If anyone wants to virtually give a round of applause by clicking on that reaction, please feel free to do so. We went from 8 networks to 32. So happy anniversary, National Family Support Network. And then lastly, we want to highlight the progress towards and opportunities for implementing the Advancing the Family Support and Strengthening Field Project strategic recommendations. So those are the things that we hope to get out of we hope that you'll get out of your time with us today. So just to give you a little snippet, a little preview of who you'll be hearing from today, I also want to briefly introduce the speakers that we will be having during our time together. So first, well, not actually first, but the first one that I'll mention is you'll hear from Governor Andy Beshear. He'll be talking about why Kentucky allocated state general funds to support their school-based FRCs and to add to their existing FRCs in the state of Kentucky. We'll be hearing from Washington State Representative Carolyn Eslick, who will be talking about why she championed FRCs and the recent statute that was adopted in the state of Washington. We'll also hear from Tara Manthey, and she's the executive director of the Denver Indian Family Resource Center. And we will also hear from Paul Cheung, who's a participant in the Joy Lock FRC in San Francisco, California. So we have a lot of different perspectives from state government, the top of state government, a local family resource center, and a participant, so that you can get many different viewpoints of the impact of family resource centers around our nation. And then lastly, I just want to give you a little overview of our agenda today. I've given you the speakers who will be talking about these things here that are listed on the slide, but just to give you an overview. So we're going to first hear that parent perspective, the perspective of being a participant in a family resource center. We're going to hear about family resource centers. Specifically, we're going to hear some information about the family resource centers in Denver. We're going to hear about family resource center networks. I've mentioned the 2 elected officials that will be sharing their experiences in Kentucky and in Washington. We're going to be hearing about advancing the family support and strengthening field annual update. We will be sharing National Family Support Network resources and events. And of course, at the end, we will be sharing next steps and asking you to complete a quick evaluation to let us know what you thought about the briefing today. So I have thoroughly enjoyed welcoming you all to our national briefing, and I am happy to pass it on to Ms. Julie Matusik.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Sorry about the delay there. I am the Membership and Administration Manager with the National Family Support Network, and I'm very excited to be here with you all today. And I am going to be introducing a video. And so because everything family resource centers do is family centered, we start with a parent perspective today. And so we will have an opportunity to hear from Paul Cheung. Please tell us something. Sorry. My video up here as I'm talking. So we are going to have an opportunity to hear from Paul Cheung, who is an immigrant Chinese father who is a participant at the Joy Lock Family Resource Center in San Francisco, Chinatown. And in this video, Paul is interviewed by Homer Tang, who has worked extensively with the Chinese community in the San Francisco Bay Area. Just one moment, and I'm going to share the screen here so you all can hear from Paul.
Good morning, Paul. Please tell us something about yourself.
咁咧，我而家一家人3口，咁我有個女咧，而家係歲半。咁咧，我仲有一個係喺8月中。
Good morning, Paul. Please tell us something about yourself.
咁咧，我而家一家人3口，咁我有個女咧，而家係歲半。咁咧，我仲有一個女咧，係喺8月中咧，又係預期出世嘅。
I have a daughter who is 2 years old, and my wife and I are expecting a second daughter in mid-August. So tell us about how you found the FRC and why did you choose to participate and continue to participate in it?
咁係透過我家姐個孫女嗰間托兒嘅，咁我就係佢哋介紹我揾到呢間家庭資源中心。咁因為我第一次有小朋友，咁咧我都想揾人哋咧可以照顧。咁咧我就得到該中心提供好多嗰啲物資啊，同埋佢哋嘅親切友善啊嘅關心啊，打電話嚟問候啊，同埋信息咁樣俾我嘅。咁我就所以就好中意呢個資源中心嚟到參加咁啦。
So my sister introduced me to the Family Resource Center. My sister's childcare center staff told me about the center, and when I first participated, I got a lot of good information as a new parent, and so I found it very helpful. And also the staff has been very courteous and supportive and caring, so I continue to participate in it. So could you describe some of the programs and services and opportunities you have accessed at the center?
咁我咧參加咗呢個資源中心咧，係有2個項目嘅。佢哋咧幫助我喺物資上面嘅幫助啊，同埋教導小朋友上邊嗰啲知識講座啊，我都有參加嘅。咁就呢間中心咧，即係都有提供好多嗰啲每個月都有嗰啲 BB 尿片啊，同埋嗰啲消毒紙巾派嘅。咁耐唔中咧，佢哋都會有問候啊，發信息過嚟啊，打電話啊，同埋需唔需要啲兒童書籍啊、玩具咁樣嚟問我哋嘅，都有俾我哋嘅。咁咧，除咗呢啲之外咧，我又參加咗2個項目嘅，一個係家長茶座，一個係兒童嬰兒發展成長嘅茶座咯。咁我喺當中咧，真係學到好多嘅知識啊，幫助小朋友嚟到點樣俾佢一個好好嘅成長啦。
So I've participated in 2 major activities. One is a parent cafe, and the other one is a parenting workshop. So I've learned a lot about parenting and child development, and also the center has provided me with a lot of resources such as diapers and wet wipes, disinfected wipes, and all sorts of concrete materials that will help me to be a parent. So Paul, what difference did participating in FRC make for you and your family?
咁咧，我參加呢個中心咧，即係對我幫助咧就好大嘅。佢即係俾到好多嗰啲資源啊，嗰啲物資嘅幫助啊，同埋各樣嘅知識啊，嚟到幫助我嘅小朋友啊成長啊。同埋了解啊，咁樣俾我應該係點樣嚟到做好一個父親啊，嚟到幫助我小朋友有一個正能量嘅發展啊，咁樣啦，成長啦。
Yeah, participating in this Family Resource Center has allowed me to be a better parent, and it has taught me how to be a positive influence on my child's development. And I'm really grateful to having been a part of this center. Why are FRCs important?
呢個中心咧就真係好重要嘅，因為咧對於我哋呢啲新移民咧，同埋生活有困難嗰啲人咧，同埋呢個世界啊又經常變啦，有新嘅知識嚟到啦，我哋又唔知道啦。我係好需要呢個中心咧，即係提供各樣嗰啲知識啊資源嚟到幫助我哋嘅，咁可以減輕我哋嗰種負擔，而可以幫助呢個小孩子咧， 佢有一個好好嘅認知同埋一個健康成長嘅咁樣啦。
Yeah, FRCs are very important, especially for us immigrant parents. We can receive a lot of support from staff to help us navigate the system and to help us with information and knowledge to support our children's development. And so I believe that FRCs are very important to help reduce the stress that families have in this modern world. Thank you very much, Paul, for your time today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
That's it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Corey, we can see you. Whoops.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. So we'll go ahead and move on to our next section. My name is Corey Chandler, and I am the Learning and Development Consultant for the National Family Support Network. And in this section, we're actually going to highlight some of the work that is being done by the Denver Indian Center and the FIRC, FRC in Colorado, as well as the Colorado Network. The Colorado Network was actually one of the founding members of the National Family Support Network in 2011. And I'm going to introduce Tara Manthey. She is the executive director of the Denver Indian Center. And Tara, if you would like to share a few words, and then we're going to share a video about work that is being done at her wonderful center.
Yeah, thank you, Corey. It's a pleasure to be invited to speak with you all today. I'm joining you from the homelands of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Ute nations here in Denver, Colorado, and I'm a citizen of the Osage Nation of Oklahoma, and have been the executive director here at Denver Indian Family Resource Center since last September. And shortly after I started, our association in Colorado Family Resource Center Association asked to feature one of our clients as part of their work in their videos, and we're happy to share that with you today. So this is a video about one of our clients, Eric, and his experience during the pandemic and receiving support from our organization.
Thank you, Tara.
I first turned to the Denver Indian Family Resource Center in 2010. It really made me want to be a better parent. I am a single parent full-time. I have 5 kids. March 17th was the last day of my job because I do a lot of live events. Everything I do relies on large crowds, so that it's over for us. It's tough. They gave me gift cards for my kids to get school clothes, which I couldn't afford. They helped me with my mortgage. Hopefully I don't lose my home. It's about all I can hope for, that we just make it. They really, truly are like family now to me. It just means the world to me. If you need help, this is the place to go.
Thank you again, Tara, for that video. And is there any update that you could provide about the father who was featured?
Yeah, like Eric said in his video, we've helped worked with his family with parenting classes and resources and helped them survive the pandemic. He works in producing live events and shows, and you know, it was a tough year because there's literally no chance of that happening. And we were able to help him get through that, and you know, they've made it through. And we just heard yesterday that Red Rocks, our world famous live music venue, will be reopening soon. So I hope that his work gets picked up soon and he'll be able to support his family. So we were really happy to see him in here during the pandemic.
Great news. Thank you for the update. And now I'll also ask you to introduce the Family and Intercultural Resource Center, and then we'll be sharing a video about them as well.
Yeah, this is another fun one because I grew up in Summit County in Colorado, which is people may know of as Copper Mountain, Breckenridge, Keystone, Arapahoe Basin ski areas. And when the pandemic suddenly shut everything down, it was in the middle of kind of the busiest week of the year up there, and many families rely on the ski industry for their livelihoods, including my own parents who were working in the transportation industry. And so we had many families throughout the state really impacted by that. So this is a story from our sister organization up in Summit County.
I've always known that at the core of what we do, we are the safety net for Summit County. Our community shut down overnight and people were without jobs, and we provided basic needs: food, rental assistance, access to health care, and hope.
Families were coming to us who, had lost their job, had lost income, didn't really know what was going to happen next, and they were kind of looking at us for support.
When COVID hit Summit, we were the first resource for them. We wanted to be able to offer them all the support they could use.
Between Ruby and I on front desk, we are answering 200 calls a day, just listening to the stories of our community and trying to answer all their questions and being there for them.
They were confused, so they had so many questions about it, so it was really good for them to be able to be informed about what was really happening.
Everybody was just calling and asking about the rental assistance. Are people going to kick us out of our place just because we're not able to pay our rent? Can you guys call our landlord, or how is this going to work?
My team usually consists of 3 housing counselors, and to respond to the COVID crisis, my team turned into a team of about 18. There was a day where we approved 60 clients for housing assistance. That's nothing that I've ever experienced before.
We're so happy so many people are coming to the food pantry during these uncertain times when they don't know when their next paycheck is coming in.
On a typical year, we maybe help 120 families and clients with housing assistance, and so we've done over 1,000. I don't think I've approved over 1,000 cases in the 8 years that I've been here.
We've had such an outpouring of support from Summit County community members. We've had at least 125 volunteer hours each week. People are so willing to help in whatever way needed to make sure their neighbors are fed during this time.
We've been able to avoid, homelessness for a lot of families and clients in Summit County, but also we've taken care of their mental health by providing them with housing security and just overall health because they have a roof over their head.
Everyone who has visited the food pantry has been so kind and so grateful for FERC and all of the resources available in Summit County. I've never been so proud to work at the FERC and live in Summit County, where everyone is so generous and so willing to help.
We are a great team, and FERC is just amazing. Our community is very lucky to have FERC out here.
I just feel so proud of being part of the FERC and to be able to support this community in the way that we do. It feels so rewarding to go to bed at night knowing that you helped someone and that that person was able to reach something that was just so hard for them.
Wow, definitely 2 amazing stories from 2 family resource centers there in the Colorado area. And Tara, one last question for you. Can you kind of give us a kind of compare and contrast in a sense, you know, the work that's being done, as we saw with FERC in the resort area, and contrast to the work that you're doing in the rural areas in Colorado.
Yeah, and Denver Indian Family Resource Center is right here in downtown Denver. And so we saw a huge impact here in Denver, but our resort communities are kind of in between rural and urban. They're rural, not a lot of people live there year round, but we have a huge impact when a lot of people are there. So there was a big impact when the pandemic started. And shut down it's like shutting down a mill or shutting down a factory. Like it really had immediate impact in the family resource centers around the state, rural, resort, and urban, provided millions of dollars in assistance, in emergency assistance, and lots of local foundations really stepped up to provide that support. And we were the fastest way to get that those resources and supports out to families so that they could keep their housing, keep their food, and support their families no matter where they were in Colorado.
All right. Well, thank you again, Tara. And so we're going to show one last video here. And this video is really going to highlight the work that's being done at the network level. And this video is also highlighting the work of the Colorado Network, Family Resource Center Network.
When you look at the framework of communities, families are at the core. Behind thousands of families in Colorado, there is a statewide organization that equips their local resource centers. The Family Resource Center Association connects local organizations to the funds, tools, and systems needed to serve all Colorado families.
We are really in the heart of a community that is living paycheck to paycheck. We look at ourselves as a protective force, so to speak, for families to thrive.
We were able to find a home and a job and all the other types of resources within the community.
Resources like childcare and parenting classes.
I'm way more patient and a lot more calm and understanding about when she's crying to figure out why she's crying, or when he's crying to figure out what's wrong with him.
We have some pretty high-need clients that walk in and meeting them exactly where they are in the moment and not judging them and helping them to locate their resources.
The community that we serve is facing so many socioeconomic pressures right now. So whether it's gentrification and trying to not be displaced from their homes, whether it's living in a childcare desert and trying to figure out how to get their children ready for school, having access to healthy food or having convenient access to healthcare.
Not only do they help me with my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old, of course, my 13-year-old has pretty much overcome her severe anxiety where she didn't go to school for a whole year. And I have to say that it was the help from here.
Finding good jobs and building meaningful careers are also top goals for Resource Center families. Sylvia and other single moms in Denver teamed up to open Kamal, a food incubator facilitated by Denver's Focus Points, an FRCA member. After learning what it takes to run a small business, Sylvia is planning to open her own food truck.
I can explain in one word what does this program means to me. Because when you come from another place, you have here no family, no friends, you know nothing. You don't have that support. You don't know anything about here. And then you find this place that helps you to have all that information. So to me, it's like my second home. It's like everything. It's to open my opportunities for everything.
Among the programs at a center in Fort Morgan is a leadership and morale boosting program for middle schoolers, which has a positive ripple effect on entire families.
So just as we've been growing, so has the Family Resource Center Association. Over the years, they have really taken the lead as far as helping us become stronger.
What impresses me the most about FRCA is they've developed a statewide centralized data system so that we can know whether we're being effective or not.
There's no way that one family resource center could afford to have the data program that we're able to have with the help of Family Resource Center Association.
Most of the data comes from the Colorado Family Support Assessment 2.0, which sparks an initial conversation with families at FRCA centers about the challenges they face and the goals they want to achieve.
The CFSA 2.0 is a concrete, solid way to show them this is where you were at 30 days ago, this is where you are at 31 days, 60 days, in a year. And that creates some new wiring in the brain as well, that, okay, yes, this is a structure, I can do this.
It's not just a feel-good service, it's clearly helping families become more economically self-reliant, so really changing the way they're raising their children for generations to come.
Other states are looking to Colorado, trying to replicate the structure and the blueprints the Family Resource Center Association has built over a couple of decades. FRCA's commitment will continue to encourage our families and strengthen many more Colorado communities.
All right. Well, I apologize. The video and the audio didn't quite match up there, but you know, we're living in challenging times, but still great information there. And definitely the Colorado Network is, again, one to highlight because we shown two videos of two of the 32 member networks, or network FRCs within Colorado. So Tara, if you want to share your experience and the value of working with the network there in Colorado.
Yeah, thank you. I joined the DIFRAC here, as I said, in September, right in the middle of the pandemic, and I received this amazing virtual introduction to the network from many of the staff, and I was surprised and shocked to learn there's only like 6 or 7. It seemed like there was an army of them because they were everywhere and helping everyone. And I think one of the biggest things that I learned at that time was just that there are other FRCs out there going through the same things we were in trying to handle this huge wave of need. And we could all work together to make that happen. And I know our databases are linked, we all work through Salesforce together. Funding opportunities come through the Resource Center Association, and that technical and support and expertise was really invaluable at the time and continues to be. So we appreciate being part of the network and having that support, because it would be really difficult here alone providing all that support otherwise.
All right. Well, thank you again so much, Tara. And, congratulations. And I hope you guys continue all of the hard work you guys are doing with the Denver Indian Resource Center. And thank you for presenting today. And I will now turn things over to Camila, and she is going to take it from here.
I was so nervous about what picture they were going to choose, so that's a good one. I had a whole thing about that. So hello, everyone. I am Camila Cunningham. I'm from the Greater Cleveland Family Strengthening Network in Cleveland, Ohio. I also serve as the convening chair for the National Family Support Network. We're going to turn this part of our briefing into hearing from elected officials and what their role is in supporting and championing family resource centers. And so we'll hear first from the governor and then the lieutenant governor of Kentucky. In this video, it'll highlight the importance of family resource centers in the Bluegrass State. So we'll just go ahead and watch that video.
Hello, I'm Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear. Thank you to the National Family Support Network for inviting me today to your national briefing. Today, we join together in sharing the value and impact of family resource centers and family support and strengthening networks. Congratulations to NFSN on its 10th anniversary as an organization that promotes positive outcomes for all children, all families, and all communities. Kentucky is happy to be home to Family Resource and Youth Service Centers, or FRCs as we call them. Our Friskies just recently celebrated 30 years in Kentucky schools and have been the shining star of our education reforms. As a lifelong Kentuckian, supporter and product of public education, I have a deep appreciation for the important work of the Friskies. In Kentucky, we have 857 Friskies across the state in over 1,200 schools. Our Friskies make an impact on student success through the many transitions of the school years and beyond. We see our centers making a difference by doing whatever it takes in the lives of students and families every day. Friskies have proven to be flexible, all-encompassing, and a reliable resource and a vital member of Team Kentucky. This is why my office designated $15 million in federal Governor's Emergency Education Relief funding to our local Friskies. These dollars, they'll enhance services for those most impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and further the reach of this vital network. This is an Education First administration, and we will always support organizations like the Friskies that help us build a better outcome for our children, our students. From being the first state to prioritize our educators and school staff for vaccinations, to ensuring proper funding and more, we'll always have your back. Kentucky communities and families trust our Friskies to work collaboratively to meet the needs of their local areas, and so do I. Thank you so much for what you do.
Hello, and thank you to the National Family Support Network for inviting me to share in your national briefing. Kentucky is a proud co-founder of this organization, and we are honored to congratulate you on your 10-year anniversary. As a former teacher and principal, I understand firsthand the importance of supporting and strengthening our education system for the sake of our families. In Kentucky, our Family Resource and Youth Service Centers are housed in our school buildings, which allows for a stronger school-home community connection. When Governor Beshear and I were working on a budget for Kentucky's GEER II funding, we knew that local Friskies were a perfect avenue through which we could enhance many services for those impacted by COVID-19. Through $15 million in grants, our Cabinet for Health and Family Services will promote the work being done by our local Friskies with key focuses on early childhood education as well as family crisis, mental health counseling for our kids. Ultimately, Friskies will use these funds to develop resources and support for full-time childcare, as well as mental and physical health services that are critical to early development and may have been exacerbated by the stresses of COVID-19. We are proud of the opportunity to use GEER II funding through our Friskies and are thrilled that it will help build a better Kentucky for everyone.
So Kentucky is one of 6 states that, red or blue, that have recently significantly increased their funding for FRCs in relation to their response to the pandemic and assisting families now and beyond. And so there's gonna be a link in the chat, I believe, that gives some information about those 6 states and what they've been able to do with their FRCs. There it is. Thanks, Andrew. So next we're going to turn to Washington State, and they're focusing their attention on FRC statewide as more of a newer development. And I'd like to introduce Representative Carolyn Eslick. And hello. Hi. And so we'll just ask a couple of questions and hear your story and your interest. And so here we go. So how did you come to know about Family Resource Centers? Like, what's your background in that?
Well, thank you very much for giving me this time today to share my story here in Washington State. I live in a small town, Sultan, Washington, on Highway 2. And in the early 90s, I owned a restaurant right on the highway and employed 42 people. I'd been 10 years into the business by then, and 42 people meant that I was doing a lot of mental health and a lot of counseling. One day I had a phone call and I answered it to find out it was on the other end, the Renee Pierre from Snohomish County Department of Health. And she asked me if I thought that our community needed a family support center. Those were foreign words to me. I'd never heard it. I said, what do you mean by that? And she said, it would be a place for your folks to come to get help, a one-door entry into human services. I said, so what do I have to do to make this happen? And she said, you need to call a community meeting. So within 24 hours, I had called 40 different leaders in all realms of the community, and we held a family support center recruitment meeting. We ended up having to have 2 of those meetings. We did end up getting the first round of money that was designated by the federal government for timber devastated communities. And that was $150,000. Volunteers of America stepped up and said, you know, we have property there that we are already doing summer camping for the DD folks, and we'd like to be the facilitator of this new program. So that's how it all started in 1992 and has been going very strong ever since.
That is such a cool story. That's an awesome story. That's an awesome story. And I feel like we all should have taken notes. There were 40 phone calls. I did hear 40 phone calls. So I heard the 40 phone calls. That's awesome. So you talked a little bit, obviously, about like how it started, and then like, and even a little bit about like why you chose that. But can you even explain a little bit like why you took on that? Why did you make the 40 phone calls? Why did you, say, hey, this will work for us?
Well, I had been dealing with employees, and we live in a small community, and we are family, and you don't just fire somebody because they didn't show up for work that day, right? Mm-hmm. They're already well trained and they're part of the family. So I knew that they needed more help than I could ever give them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And mental health and counseling and family involvement is huge in my world, since I grew up in a large family and understood the complexity of that unit. And I knew I needed help with that. So it made sense to me.
Absolutely. And isn't that what family resource centers are, right? Like connecting those dots together. Right. And it's not just one part of that. So that's awesome. And so what do you think your vision is for FRCs in Washington State? Like, what does that look like?
Well, so I ended up, after I sold the restaurant, I became mayor for the city of Sultan for almost 10 years. And during that time, we took care of some huge problems. That we had safety issues, we had homeless encampments long before we had this horrible situation we've got now. And so when all those problems had been taken care of, I had a position that was open at the state level, and I applied and I received that state representative position. Going down there, I realized, talking about family resource centers to my colleagues, that a lot of them didn't know what that was. What is a family resource center? Mm-hmm. Well, that put me right back in the 90s thinking, well, mm-hmm. we need to educate. And so I started working and negotiating, and just couldn't find the right avenue to make something happen at the state level, until I got in touch with the Children's Home Society, who had been trying to do the same work in elevating family resource centers. And I knew during all those years that I was involved in our local one that funding was always a huge problem, always. They were always writing grants. They would have a flux of employees, and then all of a sudden there's no more money. They get down to a part-time person. And I knew that's not the way we needed to run these kinds of organizations that are really doing the good work. And so we started meeting, Zooming during this last year, and brought in the family support centers that were already identified as such. And my hope, and I think that it's going to happen, just by putting into statute the definition of what a family resource center is. We now have elevated that up to so that my colleagues will be able to identify the good work. And so my dream is that there'll be someone that moves into a new community or immediately has a crisis, can just Google search Family Resource Center, and the nearest one will pop up. And my goal is to, at this moment, there's 60 identified in the state of Washington to be family resource centers. We need one in every community. So there's got to be over 300 in our state of Washington before the end of my term. Let me just say that.
No, I think you're speaking our language for us that do this work, right? Because a lot of what we do is trying to explain what it is. What is a family resource center? What does a family resource center do? And I think that is perfect, because we're like, well, the funding, you hit all the points that we go into these meetings and we're like, but it's this, but it's this. And having you in that position to be able to do that, even from your lived experience, obviously played a huge part in what that looked like. So thank you for that. I didn't have to ask you like tough questions about that, because you already you already said that. So my last question would be, what would you encourage elected officials in states to think about doing in regards to FRCs? And I know you hit on that a little bit, but maybe specifically for elected officials.
Well, so it's pretty simple. If you don't have the definition of family resource centers in your state statute, that's the first thing to do. We worked hard, and being able to identify the national FRC network, I did not know about that till just a few minutes ago. A few months ago, I didn't know that you existed. And so to be able to keep marketing yourselves so that all of those folks out there that in the political world are getting more familiar with your work. You know, what I did find is that many years ago, there was family resource centers that we called in the 1800s settlement houses.
Yes.
Right? You're familiar with that.
Yes.
I was not until this last year and doing all the work that I've done in it. So we've been doing this for years. We just call it something different now.
Absolutely, absolutely. I just want to give you a shout out. I just want to give you a shout out, because many people are saying they appreciate your wonderful work that you're doing. They love your leadership. So I wanted to make sure you knew that on there. They're saying thank you, thank you. So thank you so much for your time and your enthusiasm. It makes me very excited to hear elected officials be excited about the things that we are. And so thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And congratulations on 10 years celebration.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think Andrew's up next.
All right, thank you very much. So how wonderful to hear all these different perspectives on the value of family resource centers and networks of family resource centers, and glad to see all of you here today for this session. I want to share my screen here to introduce the next piece that we'll be talking about. My name is Andrew Russo, and I'm the co-founder and director of the National Family Support Network. So that means that I'm 10 years older since when we first started this, and I'm very glad to be here with others who are co-founders as well, such as McLain, the executive director of the Colorado Network that you heard about today. And the reason why we do this briefing every year relates to this, that when we were getting started, as you heard, we were all volunteer effort for our first 4 years of existence. And then it was actually the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation that found us and said, we've heard about family resource centers, we've heard their networks in some places, but we don't really understand them. So could you help us work on a research project to learn more about them? And we said, we'd love to help. We just don't have any staff. So if you could help us with that, then we'd be glad to help with the project. And so they understood. And then they gave us our first funding, which then allowed the network to hire its first staff. And we then embarked on this project working with the Research Institute in Colorado to research FRCs and networks of FRCs across the country. So all that research is on our website, and it's on a page that's that's called the Advancing the Field Project. So the Advancing the Field Project had two parts. One was to do that research, and then the second part was based on that research to identify strategic recommendations for how FRCs could and networks of FRCs could be scaled nationwide. So what would that look like? So we worked with our member networks, we worked with a number of national partner organizations, other external stakeholders to help think this through, and we came up with these 5 areas here that you see. So the strategic recommendations focus on strengthening existing family support and strengthening networks. So you've heard there are different kinds of networks. There are networks that are also all volunteer networks versus networks that have staffing and resources and can do a lot more. So we recognize that having all states green on the map is a great first step, but then also there's more to think about in terms of how do we strengthen the networks across the board. Next is to establish new networks. So you heard Natalie reference earlier, if you happen to be from a state that isn't currently colored in green on this map, we'd love to connect with you. So we're always looking to identify what we call catalysts or local champions who will connect with other stakeholders and keep talking about FRCs until they move forward in the state. And we're here to support them with that. So the National Network doesn't go in and set up networks in states. We look for who are the catalysts that we can support to champion this work in their areas. Next is to strengthen the family support and strengthening workforce development. So in the family support and strengthening field, people don't go off to school to become a family support worker. People are in this field for lots of different reasons and come to it from lots of different backgrounds. And many folks do not necessarily have the training and support to succeed in these roles. That's where the organized work of networks and focusing on ensuring quality work with families and that people are well trained and supported and don't burn out. All of this is critical importance and great work that networks do with training, technical assistance, with workforce development in our field. So we want to do more to strengthen that. And one of the key ways that we do that has to do with the standards of quality for family strengthening support that I'll talk more about in just a bit. Next is supporting the evaluation of family support efforts. So there's been a lot of wonderful research that's been conducted about FRCs that is all on our website. It's on the FRC page, we call it, is where you can find all the statistics, data, and the research reports that back up the wonderful things that we can share about FRCs. For example, in Teller County, Colorado, a semi-rural county outside of Colorado Springs, when their human services agency there moved to a differential response system with child welfare, meaning as calls came into a hotline, that then they would refer out families that they weren't going to open cases for to the local FRC on a voluntary basis. So they moved to this differential response system in 2016. Since that time, the child abuse rate in Teller County has decreased 57.7%. 57.7%. And there's only one FRC in that county. So just by working with one FRC, they more than halved the number of children who are in the system. Think of the tremendous savings that represents, both in terms of costs with the child welfare system, which is incredibly expensive, and the human costs in terms of all of those children and families who will not enter a system that is highly stigmatized, that no family wants to have anything to do with, and once you get involved with, you may never get out of. So that's an example of data and evaluation work that, when done, really tells the story very poignantly about family resource centers. But there's more to be done with that, and share more about that in a moment. And the next, connecting and leveraging family support and strengthening networks with other initiatives. So how can we connect dots with FRCs and other efforts that are happening to move them forward? So for example, with the pandemic response, this is a very obvious one where we got asked, can FRCs help with vaccine acceptance and encouraging people to get vaccinated? And the answer is, of course they can, because FRCs have those deep trusting relationships with the people in their community where they are go-to places for accurate information. And that alone can make a big difference in terms of helping to support families and children to move forward during these really challenging times. So these are the 5 strategic recommendations that guide our work, both our work internally as a network and also working with external stakeholders to move them forward. These are all big lifts here. So why we have this briefing is to report back publicly on our progress towards moving the needle on each of these 5 areas. So it ensures that all that work wasn't just pretty documents that live on shelves, but is something that is moving every day and something that we hold ourselves accountable to publicly report back on once a year. So going into some more depth about how some things have moved forward. As referenced already, there have been significant increases in states funding FRCs, both to respond to the pandemic and beyond. And Alabama was the first state to lead the way around this time last year, and we celebrated that at this virtual event. And then a number of other states have followed. As you can see here, California, Kentucky, you heard about today, Maryland has committed to open up 3 new FRCs each year for the next 10 years, which is amazing. Utah, a state representative there, secured $2.9 million in TANF funding after having already secured $900,000 for COVID funding for FRCs. And Vermont also has made a great investment. So we've seen investments both specifically to support FRCs to respond to COVID, but we're seeing states take on those investments beyond COVID as well, recognizing that FRCs are not just a good idea during a pandemic, but they're good to have always. And as you can see from this list, such a great mix of both red and blue states shows that this is something everybody can get behind. Turning to the federal level, to give context, there are several federal funding streams that can be leveraged to support the development of new FRCs. And that's one of the key points of what we look for, is to see that map turn green by more FRCs coming into existence, and even states that have FRCs getting to universal coverage, which already exists in some states like Vermont and New Jersey. How can we, as Representative Eslick was mentioning, ensure that all families have access to FRCs in their communities, that we wouldn't think twice about there being an FRC, just like there should be a good school and a park and a library. These are just building blocks of healthy communities and neighborhoods. So looking at the federal picture, there's no dedicated federal funding for FRCs. So they're not like Head Start programs or after school programs or home visiting programs, all of which have dedicated federal funding. And yet there is federal funding in the system. And primarily the funding that is leveraged comes from these streams that you see here. So community-based child abuse prevention, or CBCAP funding, which is very flexible and can basically be used for anything and everything that relates to child abuse prevention. Also, community collaborations to strengthen and preserve families. So this is a small stream, but one that has already been effectively leveraged by folks in several states, including Florida and Indiana, to set up new networks of FRCs. Also, preschool development grant, birth through 5. So this is, we're really excited that this funding, which basically allows states to plan for how they're going to support children 0 to 5. And then after the planning process, they could apply for competitive grants to then fund their plans. Well, Wisconsin was the first state that actually successfully included FRCs in their planning process, and then is now rolling out a really wonderful initiative that's going to further strengthen FRCs and further develop them as a system of support for families across the state. So really excited to see that funding now being leveraged for FRCs. And Title IV-B, which includes promoting safe and stable families, this has also been leveraged for FRCs in different places, including in Georgia, where Natalie oversees that work. All right, so the context of talking about CBCAP is particularly important now because the American Rescue Plan Act included an enormous increase in CAPTA funds, a temporary increase, but an enormous one. And that is annually, it's $40 million. So that isn't even $1 million per state that goes into this fund, but it was recently increased to $250 million. And this actually is slightly outdated on the slide. It was originally announced it was going to need to be spent by 2023, but actually now it's been extended that it can be spent until the end of 2025, basically. So that gives states some more room to spend on spend it down, which we think is really good for FRCs, that instead of thinking, oh, I have to spend this really quickly, they have some time to space it out. And the significant increases that they have, FRCs are a really great investment to talk with folks about, because first of all, they're extremely cost effective, and they're not major investments. So they're ones that can be more readily sustained than some other kinds of investments. So with this, this funding that's been rolling out, the states need to turn in their plans for this by June 7th. So we've been connecting with different states, the folks who currently receive those funds, to share information about FRCs for their consideration. And also we're really thrilled to work with several other national organizations, including the National Alliance of Children's the Children's Trust Fund Alliance, the NCAN, Prevent Child Abuse America, and I forgot one, the Center for the Study of Social Policy, to issue joint guidance for states about how they might use these funds. That's actually right on our website that you can find that there on the main homepage. And another piece to reference is the funding related to child welfare. And so in terms of talking about child welfare, this is a new document. This is an excerpt from a new document, which we'll also put on in the chat. And this is also on our website already on that FRC page, which diagrams out family resource centers in relation to child welfare. This is something we worked with our national partner, Casey Family Programs, on developing, which illustrates the continuum from primary prevention on about how FRCs may be involved with supporting families who are connected with the child welfare system. So of course, the first column is what we were most known for as FRCs, is primary prevention. So supporting families to be healthy and strong and in the first place and never end up in the child welfare system. And then the other columns relate to when differential response, we talked about that already. And then the third column is the one I want to highlight here, which is when there's an open child welfare case. So when there's an open child welfare case, family resource centers across the country are already working with families who have open child welfare cases. And the connect to make here in relation to federal funding has to do with Family First, which I'll talk about on the next slide here. And you see here at the bottom that we've added into this those statistics, like I mentioned, about the Teller County example. Okay, so with Family First, this is a huge, big shift in child welfare funding that passed several years ago, and all states need to turn in Family First plans about how they're going to shift their funding and services that typically go to further downstream services, to shift them not all the way upstream, but somewhere in the middle, where they're working with families who are known to the system, but trying to support them to stay with their children, basically. So with that, with Family First funding, it allows for up to 12 months of in-home parent skills-based programs for those families. And in-home doesn't actually mean like home visiting. It just means the child welfare terminology, that the child is still with the family. The child hasn't been removed from the family. So here's the thing, FRCs are already providing various parent skills-based programs that are already on the clearinghouse that these particular curricula need to be on in order to be reimbursed by the federal government. So that's the thing. FRCs are already using these curricula, such as Healthy Families America, motivational interviewing, Parents as Teachers, Triple P. And what we haven't seen yet is states making the connect that they can leverage these existing FRCs that are already using these curricula to try to start leveraging, pulling down the federal funding to support the FRCs and support these families. Now, this is a good idea for a number of reasons, not just from the funding side, but in terms of the families. When we think about the families who are referred for mandated parenting education, when you're talking about referring them for that at an FRC, it removes much of the stigma, because at the FRC, they're in those parenting classes along with parents who are there voluntarily. And unless they self-disclose, you can't tell the difference who's there because they have to be there and who's there just voluntarily. And also they're, of course, in an environment where they build social connections with other families, which is a key factor, we know, to reducing child abuse, and are able to be plugged into other supports and services. So it's just a good idea to leverage FRCs to support Family First implementation. And that's one of the big things we plan to continue working on in this coming year, because we haven't seen the connects being made, even though on this side, as you can see, it's a very clear case making them. Another piece about Family First that we do see movement with is also with kinship navigation. So kinship with family members, relatives taking care of children when their parents are not able to. There is the funding also in Family First that supports those kin, to supports them to help navigate systems, to be able to support those children well. This is literally what FRCs do anyway. So FRCs are already in the business of helping folks navigate and connecting people to resources. And we're thrilled to see in this past year that New Hampshire was the first state to make this connect. So to leverage FRCs across the state in an intentional systemic way to support Family First implementation through kinship navigation. So we hope, well, New Hampshire led the way as it does in many things, such as elections. We hope they will, they're the first, but we hope they will not be the last. All right, and then another piece to just share briefly that you heard referenced already by Natalie is that we have new standards this year that we're so excited about. So the newly revised nationally adopted standards of quality for family strengthening and support. We went through a rigorous review and revision process in the past year on top of everything else that was going on, working with our member networks across the country, with representatives of family support and strengthening programs in Canada, and with parent leaders to hear everyone's voices as we looked at further developing these standards. And what we came up with was these standards that now reflect these 5 core areas of practice: family-centeredness, family strengthening, diversity, equity, inclusion, community strengthening, and evaluation. And the focus on diversity, equity, inclusion is not limited to just that one section. It is infused throughout the standards. That was really important for us in terms of where we are as a nation and what we need to pay attention to. So that's reflected in the standards. And also the addressing of community conditions that are important to address in a systemic way to help families and communities thrive, as well as ensuring that these standards would be relevant for application both the US and Canada. We're really excited that my peer, the director of the network in Canada, Families Canada, will actually become a standards trainer next week. So we're really excited that the standards will eventually be rolling out in our neighbor to the north. Right, and these standards create a common language and expectations across different types of family support programs. So they're used by FRCs, but they're not exclusive for FRCs. They can be used by any program working with families. We would say that could help enhance your practice. And they're available for free, just like the old ones were, the new ones are too. So they're available for free along with all the implementation tools on our website. So feel free to download them 24 hours a day. Right, and a few more things to mention here. This is the map that shows you where the standards have rolled out since they first, we first started training on them in 2012. And as you can see, we're rapidly pushing nearly 10,000 people certified on the standards coast to coast, which is incredible, incredible, in terms of what that means for more and more families then being able to access quality practice through staff that are well-trained on this, and organizations that are being reflective of their practice on an ongoing basis, that are supported by strong networks that are supporting all of that. And with that, I will turn things over to Julie, who's going to share some resources, events, and opportunities that may be of interest to you to plug in to moving forward.
Thanks, Andrew. So as you can see here on the slide, this is some of the resources that are available to you through the National Family Support Network. So all of the stats and research reports that have been mentioned, as well as videos and about family resource centers, they're all available on our website. So you can access those there, as well as member network snapshots, which is a glimpse inside each of our member network. So we have an interactive map that you can access on our website and see information about each of the member networks. There's also many tools that are available on the NFSN website, different network development tools, specifically for family support and strengthening networks around development, as well as investing in family resource center systems of support for funders. And then, of course, all of the resources that are associated with the standards of quality, the implementation tools, all available for free on the NFSN website. And then we also have various services that are available to you through the NFSN. So we are available to facilitate connections to National Family Support Network members across the country. We also are available to present for key stakeholders. So whether you have educational leaders, child welfare leaders, children's trust funds, any other public-private funders about working with and investing in family resource centers, we are happy to partner with you to make presentations about that. And then we also have available to you as services providing sample Family Resource Center RFPs, any evaluation plans, and information about data management systems. We have that available as well. And we also have supporting exploration of network development. If that's something you're interested in, would love to have a discussion with you. And trainings. We have 2 trainings available to everyone. The standards certification training. So the standards that we mentioned that are available for free on our website, you can participate in the certification training and really learn how to best use them and how your program can benefit from them, as well as the Developing and Sustaining Effective Parent Advisory Committee training. So whether you're setting up a new parent advisory committee or wanting to enhance the one you already have, that's a great training to take advantage of as well. And yes, thanks, Alana. And so we also have webinar Wednesdays. These are offered throughout the year, and you can find our schedule on our website on the Webinar Wednesday tab. We have upcoming highlighting the Nevada Family Resource Centers at the end of May, and we'll have an introduction to the standards of quality for family strengthening and support that will highlight the Utah network and how they have used the standards of quality in their state. So definitely check those out on the website. We also have an open certification training coming up in June. So this is an opportunity for you to participate in the standard certification training that we were just talking about. So you can register for that on our website. You also can see on the certification training page, you can see what other opportunities are available in your own states for you to participate in as well. And this is that Parent Advisory Committee training that we just talked about. So a wonderful, you receive very concrete tools. This is for staff, and wonderful whether you're setting up a new Parent Advisory Committee or wanting to strengthen your existing one. And this is facilitated by, co-facilitated by NFSN staff member, as well as an experienced national parent leader. And very, very highly rated. So wonderful training.
And Julie, I want to add one thing there too, that want to be mindful about connecting the dots with this training and diversity, equity, inclusion, because we can't get to equity unless families have agency in their communities. And so making that connect, which Family Resource Centers always do in terms of advancing parent leadership development, this is a key way to pay attention to advancing it.
Absolutely. And thank you. Thank you so much for being here. This little boy is signing thank you in American Sign Language. And with that, I'll turn it over to Natalie.
Yes, Julie, thank you so much for sharing all of that helpful information. I encourage everyone to visit our website to find out and register more, register for those trainings and find out more about the information that Julie shared. And as Julie mentioned, this adorable little boy is signing thank you. And so we just want to thank you all for joining us in our national briefing. I want to give a special thank you to all of our speakers, all of our presenters, especially our elected officials. Thank you, Representative Eslick, for taking time to join us today. Thank you to all of the speakers from our original 8 states back in 10 years ago for participating with us. And then thank you to Camila Cunningham and our convening committee for planning this national briefing, doing such a great job in planning this convening national briefing. And then lastly, I want to thank the National Family Support Network staff. I want to thank our executive director and our co-founder, Andrew Russo, and all of the staff, Julie Matusik, Corey Chandler, Michael Zamora, Michael Jones, all of you. Just thank you so much for all you do. And most importantly, thank you to all the membership and all of the participants today, again, for joining us for our 2021 national briefing. Lastly, before you sign off, I want to ask you to please take just a few moments to click on the link in the chat box to fill out the next step survey. Of course, that will help us identify how the National Family Support Network can work with you moving forward, and also help us evaluate our event and incorporate that input into our next event next year. So please take a moment to click on that link and complete that evaluation survey for us. And then we have another adorable little child to say goodbye to you as well. So again, please remember to complete that survey for us. And I hope that you all will be able to come back at 4 o'clock to visit the virtually visit the Family Resource Center in South Carolina. And don't worry, if you did not register, it's the same link. So you can just join us back here at 4 o'clock. So again, thank you so much to all of the presenters, the staff, and you all, the participants, for joining our 2021 national briefing.